Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of The Niche Cast, where we are getting through some major Aotearoa sporting topics. Got some football, ferns, footy, a couple of games over the next few days leading up to the variety show next week. We also have a whole lot of cricket. We got some Blackcaps test cricket. We have domestic contracts as well. So we got a couple of bits and bobs that we'll chat through there. First round of domestic contracts are announced. I think there's a second round June 30th, I think I saw. And basically, as you work down the New Zealand cricket rankings, contracts mean more. So don't necessarily worry too much about the Blackcaps contracts, but definitely get into the domestic contracts and figure out who some of the up-and-comers are in the domestic cricket circuit. We'll chat about that. And of course, major rugby league things. Got Aotearoa versus Tonga, got Kiwi Ferns footy, got Samoa versus Cook Islands. It's all happening. Fantastic time to be alive. Matariki's here. Fantastic rugby league. And wildcard, just as a prelude to mindfulness, I did want to shout out Matariki because it's the type of thing where I think a lot of people, they're going to get out, they're going to try catch the stars, try and look at the stars. I mean, it's going to be cold as fuck. Like, let's be honest. It's going to be freezing cold, and it's going to be pretty tricky. Like, it might be cloudy, might be raining wherever you are. You might not catch the actual Matariki in the sky. And if you do, you're going to see it for like a couple minutes, and then you're going to go home and go about your business. Whereas I think, like, if we just treat it as a time to reconnect to Aotearoa, because the Aotearoa spirituality is all about the mountains, the rivers, the ocean, the land. Those are our gods. Those are our deities.
Stars.
Well, easy on there, because the other aspect is the universe. And Matariki and the stars, and how the ancient Polynesians arrived to Aotearoa, navigating, using nature, all those things. It's a combination of the nature here in Aotearoa and the nature above, which is the universe, which is the stars. So yeah, if you're going to go out and check out Matariki, cool. Don't feel bad if you're not out there like catching the stars, like missing out, because you can also just reconnect to Aotearoa, get in the land, get out in the ocean, do whatever you need to do to put the Aotearoa spirituality and the land and mana of Aotearoa on a pedestal at this time of year. Bring in the new year in delightful Aotearoa fashion. Any hot takes on the back of that wildcard?
Well, it is quite nice to have a public holiday that's built off of the natural world and our connection to it, rather than like, every other holiday we get is either a religious holiday or a political holiday or just a random society holiday, or it's all human to human type stuff. I mean, the religious holidays, obviously you can make an exception there depending on where you're leaning, but just like a pure public holiday based on the natural world is quite a nice little quite a nice adjustment to that calendar, I reckon.
I think you're being like generous to some of the public holidays we already have. Like
Yeah.
when you run through them and speak of them real simply, Waitangi is when the Pākehā scammed the tangata whenua, the people of the land. So okay, cool, love to celebrate that. We got Easter and Christmas, which are just Christian holidays. So
Yeah.
like suddenly we are ruled by Christianity, which yeah, okay, cool. What else do we have? Queen's birthday. Well, who gives a fuck about the Queen? We're not.
It's not even a real birthday.
And what we're celebrating being colonized. It's like I'm falling out of favor with the Com Games, like less so, well, more so than the Olympics. The Olympics is, from a sporting perspective, they're both cool, but when you dig into them, they're pretty sketchy. And it's like the Commonwealth Games. What, we're just celebrating that Aotearoa is colonized? Like some of when you speak of,
or all the formerly colonized countries are ganging up on the British Empire.
Bit of
You
revenge.
can look at it that way if you want.
Yeah. So long story short, some of those public holidays are a bit sketchy, like a bit like we're not proud of them. Whereas Matariki is all about the land. It's all about Aotearoa. It's all about the universe, the skies above us, farther sky, Papatūānuku, Ranganui, Earth Mother, Father Sky, a lot of those ideals, a lot of Aotearoa mana is amplified at the time of Matariki. So try tap into that more so than are we checking out the sky, the stars, because there's many stars in the sky. We can guarantee that. And I think Matariki, it's more about what it represents as opposed to the specificity of it. We're from the Niche Cache, theniche-cache.com. We deliver big, major, hectic Aotearoa sporting yarns, as well as a bit of Jātearoa, Aotearoa spiritual flavor as well. Check out the website, theniche-cache.com, big yarns, full rugby league, international rep round preview. It's all there. Blackcaps versus England preview. The wildcard's got his football Ferns written stuff all live. There's flying Kiwis. There's when's that Stephen Adams quotable edition coming out, wildcard?
Maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. I'm hoping I can finish it before the end of the week. I'm close.
That's so. The wildcard was basically tracking Stephen Adams throughout the whole NBA playoffs, so you can go read about that to see how it all ended, and then over the next few days you can have a giggle as well. Bit of funny Stephen Adams content. That's the website, theniche-cache.com. Big up the Patreon funder. The best way to support the Niche Cache is word of mouth, and a bit of hard mahi, checking in with the website every day, enjoying our content, and telling the sis that even the cuzzy that the Niche Cache has got some shit firing off. Second best way might be the patreon.com/our Niche Cache, where it's straight up the guts supporting our content, and there's also an extra podcast that revolves around cricket. But the primary mahi there is just it's a great avenue to support us directly straight up the guts. And of course, Monday and Friday, we serve up an email banger. The email newsletter dispatch, theniche-cache.substack.com. And it's just major extra yarns. Everything's major, everything's hectic, everything's on fire at the Niche Cache right now. And email banger tomorrow, I might be doing a bit of domestic contracts. I might be getting a bit of Kiwi NRL updates, stuff like Jura Momosia signing with the Parramatta Eels. Other extra bits and bobs, they're always found in our email newsletter, Monday and Friday evening, as well as all the links to our content, podcast, and links to the fresh articles on the website. Wildcard, give us a double whammy of mindfulness. We set up the Matariki vibes, and now we're coming back for the second banger, the second whammy.
Yeah, the second whammy, dipping into physical book form again with Tao Te Ching. What I did is I just opened it up on a random page and picked the coolest quote, but I found a pretty good one. I quite like this. When you do not trust people, people will become untrustworthy.
So you got to open yourself up a bit. You got to be willing to trust other people and put some trust in other people for them to earn your trust.
And it's just funny how much of a self-fulfilling prophecy that becomes, where suddenly everyone looks untrustworthy to you. It's like, well, of course they do, because you weren't willing to trust them in this. You made this happen. They didn't make this happen. You made this happen because of your the perceptions you took into this, whatever form of relationship it is, right?
But a trust goes a long way as well. You can always benefit from having a bit of trust in your life. Wildcard, the football Ferns are back in our lives. They are playing games against Norway and Wales. The Norway game is Sunday
morning. 2 a.m., something like that.
And then we go on Wednesday morning. First of all, what's the importance of these games? Why are they? I would assume they are fixtures to get some mahi in ahead of flowing into a World Cup.
Yeah, which the World Cup's in about a year or something like that. Basically, they're just in that phase where they just have to cram in as many games as possible, but before now and then, because the best preparation they can get is just getting the squad together, whoever's available, every single international window you can, playing as many fixtures as possible, just going through the grind for 12 months, and ultimately, like, the results, whatever they do prior to the World Cup, it's what happens at the World Cup that's the important bit. So they could win all these games and then like just get swept in the World Cup group stage. That's a disaster. They could lose all these games and win a couple in the World Cup group stage, and that would be an outstanding result, sort of thing, you know. Obviously, they're trying to win every game they play, but I do think, especially this tour, this particular tour that they've got over in Europe. So Norway on Sunday morning, Wales on Wednesday morning. Two teams that they've played before in relatively recent past too. Like there's a few players unavailable. Obviously, there's it's one of those ones where there's a little bit of awkward timing on a few counts, a few injuries, and things like this. So they're not 100% full strength. Not too far off it. It's certainly not a B team, but there are like 3 or 4 starters who won't be there, and we know that they are a team that probably relies on a few key players. So, but that's all opportunities for others to step up and show what they can do. And there's definitely a few younger players that are in there that are quite interesting to keep an eye out on, like Kate Taylor and Mackenzie Barry being called up from the Wellington Phoenix team. Go.
So some of those young players, their anointed club is A-League off-season program. Is that because they're not like, I imagine some of those players are Wellington Phoenix Wahine players, and they're not necessarily signed to a club right now? Because otherwise they'd have Wellington Phoenix, right? Because there's Lily Allfield, Elizabeth Anton, Mackenzie Barry, and Kate Taylor.
Yeah.
So they are basically A-League, women's A-League professionals.
Yeah, like the story there is just that a lot of the players who are based around there, most of the Phoenix squad, but a couple others who have come back for their off season, because the A-League women's is not a like 12-month full competition kind of thing. So the contracts don't run the entire year. So they're technically off contract. Liz Anton played for Perth the last 2 years, but the other ones that you mentioned were Wellington Phoenix players. Not all of them are in that basket, though. Like, I think Malia Steinmetz, Claudia Bunge, Rebecca Stott would be another one. There's a few others who are...
Michaela Moore. Like, they're unattached.
Yeah, Michaela Moore's unattached, being released from Liverpool. The other 3 I mentioned played A-League and are currently playing MPLs, those state league stuff in Australia. Which is a little bit weird, because I think on the press release they had Rebecca Stott playing for Bulleen Lions or whoever it is, whatever MPL club she's playing for. But I think they might have had Malia Steinmetz as unattached and Claudia Bunge, even though they're playing for Northern Tigers. Yeah, Paige Satchel. I think Paige Satchel is unattached, and I think Hannah Wilkinson might be the same thing. Like, they're just not playing at the moment in between their A-League seasons. But Claudia Bunge and Malia Steinmetz they are playing MPL, and I don't know why they weren't listed as that, but whatever. But that's the situation. That's one of the things I mean about like this being rough timing. Like, a lot of players also are in between contracts or things like that. It's the off season as well in a lot of European leagues as well as the A-League. So few of those little frisky factors at play here. And Elite and Abby Ursig both still unavailable. So, things like that make it a little bit trickier, but that's what I mean about why the focus for this tour is the same. Like, it's all about development preparation, getting like systems in place. And the way Jika Komplova wants to set up is to have like a formation where you can have players plug and play kind of thing. If someone's missing, so like the same formation each time, everyone knows their role. Therefore, you can step in when a key player is missing and say, like, well, I know that this, left wing position requires this skill. Like, this is my role. This is what I'm expected to do, kind of thing. And it's a little bit easier to fit in new players in and out when that's the case. So that's what they're trying to build towards. And these should be 2 relatively competitive friendlies. I think Wales is the more likely to get a result out of. Norway are pretty good. And yeah, I think I'm not sure about Wales, but I know Norway are definitely preparing for the Euros, which are on in about a week and a half. So this is their like full strength team getting ready for a major competition, whereas we're not. We're just popping up and being been nice and friendly in that thing. I assume Wales are probably in the Euros as well, but I'm not sure about that. We played Norway before the 2019 World Cup and won 1-0. Rosie White scored. We played Wales at a similar time and lost 1-0, but should have won. We're the better team and couldn't put away their chances, kind of thing. Have played Norway once since and lost 2-1 at the Algarve Cup just before the pandemic. And I think also the other factor with Norway is that they've got Ada Hedgeberg, who plays for, I think, Lyon and is one of the best strikers in the world. Won the Ballon d'Or a couple of years ago. She hadn't been playing for quite a while. She took 2 or 3 years off from international football. She's back now, so she didn't play in either of those other games. So that does push Norway a little bit more outside of our comfort zone in terms of the thing. But Wales is also a competitive game, and they're both in the rounds where it's like good football, good football. The kind of games they should be trying to play.
Definitely. Also got Emma Ralston. She plays in Norway. And you've got Ellie Green also playing in Norway. Ellie Green called up for the first time, so they'll be doing a bit of Norwegian sledging during the game and off the bench as well.
Yeah, Ellie Green's an interesting one because she's the Australian girl from Sydney FC who switched allegiances, was with the squad in the last time, but only as a training player because the eligibility thing hadn't been finished yet. So opportunity for a debut there.
There is a comparison to the Kiwi Ferns squad because over my shoulder on the far side is Lyshawn Albert-Jones, and she is named to start in the halves for the Kiwi Ferns, and she is a local domestic player. She was the MVP of the women's championship earlier this year, playing with Akarana, and then so she is a domestic player. Most of the squad is NRLW players. And then you've got someone like Annalie Longo, who does have a lot of experience and is basically a Football Ferns veteran, but she's also playing out of Aotearoa, one would assume, domestically. Yeah. Not like a professional, unless she's like pure professional at the local grassroots level with apparently Christchurch United. But it's good to see. It is maybe coincidental. It might be circumstances, as you said. Squad Longo should be there most times anyway. But it is good to see a bit of a mix there, where there is an avenue for some of these players and players across all sports to step into an international setup from a domestic level, which kind of tells you that there's a lot of good mahi happening at the domestic level, because these players are selected because they're ready. It's not like you're the only player, you play rugby league or you play football, we need you right now. Like Annalie Longo is pretty much a certified international caliber footballer. She's played for a long time. Lyshawn Albert-Jones was the MVP and is now a starting half in the Kiwi Ferns. So she is obviously deemed to be ready, which, as I think about it more, it just tells you about the foundations, the grassroots solid foundations here in Aotearoa, where that is possible. As opposed to like having international teams where everyone's just from far-flung corners around the world and some of them barely have any connections to Aotearoa. We've come a long way.
Yeah. Annalie Longo is a bit of a special case there. Like she should be playing professionally. Like she's good enough. That's no drama. She's played a lot of she doesn't have to. She's played a lot of A-League seasons up until recently. Like she played the last 2, but she didn't play the most recent A-League season. And that's because basically she got a job with New Zealand Football, which was relatively full-time as like the I don't know what the exact title is, but she's like the head of women's football development, basically, for New Zealand Football, which is a big gig, and also has done some good stuff on TV as well, doing a bit of like studio punditry and things like this. She stepped away from A-League stuff to focus on that day job. She also stepped away from Football Ferns stuff. I don't think she's played since I think the Olympics. So she's basically been a year out of international football, but is back in here. So see how that goes. She's the kind of special case though. It's like you've played 120 odd times for the country. You can step in from domestic football. You're not going to lose it too much, and you're going to be, even if you don't play much, someone like her is going to be a valued squad member who can teach plenty. And this is a time when the Ferns are looking for like let's try find all the creative attacking answers we can get. Here's this heavily experienced player who's pretty good in those areas, the MVP of the domestic league last year. So same deal there as well. It's worth a go. No dramas there. Ordinarily I wouldn't. You'd think the domestic level is a bit too low to where the football fans are trying to get to. Like, it's a great launching pad. A lot of professionals have come through that, but then it's like there's 2 or 3 steps before you get to the football ferns kind of thing. Italy Longo gets to skip that step. It's probably a little less the case with rugby league, I think, just because there are fewer pro options around the world. It means the New Zealand level stocks up pretty highly compared to other domestic things, whereas in football that's less the case, but it is that launching pad, and it is somewhere where, like, Italy Longo playing domestically does not have to end their international career kind of thing.
Yeah, just trying to celebrate things, just trying to big up the local circuit. I think launching pad is the key word, because everyone has a different situation. Everyone is just trying to go different places. They're coming from different places, different circumstances, different contexts, but there is a launching pad. And you think about Te Maire Martin. He retired, was forced to retire, came back to New Zealand, raised his mana and recovered. And that was a launching pad to get back into the NRL and back into the Kiwis. So I think, like, that's a good way to look at it. Like, the caliber of domestic sport in Aotearoa has become a launching pad. Even someone like Michael Rippon, he's coming from the domestic cricket launch pad, and that launched them into Netherlands squads, and it's now launched them into a Blackcaps squad as well. So big up Aotearoa, the launching pad for all international.
That Wellington Phoenix squad, the Wellington Phoenix Wahine squad last year, like, where did they all come from? Just domestic leagues. They weren't picking players from other professional leagues and bringing them back to Wellington. They were picking players from around the country and pushing them up into professional stocks, right? Like, that's the launching pad there, and it's like purest form. Yeah,
that's like you go to one of those trampoline parks and there's just shitloads of tramps everywhere, and they're all a launching pad for a whole team of young wahine, in this case, to bounce up and launch off. It's not like just
not come back down again.
You're gone.
Stick to the roof.
Someone who jumped off the launching pad a long time ago was Kosta Barbarouses, and he's now returned to the Wellington Phoenix wildcard. Seems good.
I think so. I think it's a good move. There's a little bit of, like, how fans can be in sports, where there's a little bit of, like, bad blood about the way that he left last time. We came back for the 2016-17 season, signed for 2 years, left after 1, requested a release, was given that release, went back to, I think, Melbourne Victory, won a title, switched to Sydney, won another title, his 3rd and 4th career titles. Only player in A-League history to have won a title with 3 different clubs, because he also got one with Brisbane Roar back in the day, which, if he plays a couple more years with the Phoenix, you never know, maybe he can add it, maybe he can make it a 4th. A 5th overall title in a 4th different club, that would be amazing. But little bit of bad blood about how he left last time, but as I sort of wrote about in the piece I did about it, it's like the timing was so bad when he came back last time, and like, he signed for Ernie Merrick, and Ernie Merrick quit after 8 games because the team was doing terribly. They lost 6 out of 8 games. He resigned. So the entire rest of the season, for about a month, you have Buckingham and Greenacre as interims, temporary, until Buckingham gets given the full interim job for the rest of the season. That's obvious. And then Kosta was talking about this in his press conference about, like, the footballing reasons why it wasn't working last time. He's like, well, there wasn't much structure. There wasn't much cohesion. There wasn't much stability. I'm like, yeah, well, that adds up when you spend 2/3 of the season with interim coach in charge. Like, they're not going to be able to put in, like, tactical structures and things like that. And obviously there's no stability if that's the case, and all these things. And he didn't have a very good season, and he was on relatively big money. And the way I remember it, when he left, it was like, oh, well, like, I don't think of that. I don't think back on that and be like, you bastard, you skinned us. What are you doing? It was like he signed for a club that were in one position. By the end of the season, they're in a different position, where they realize they're probably going to have to do a bit of rebuilding and at least get a new manager. And what, like, everything had changed by that point. And if you're on big money like that and underperforming, it's like, well, we could probably sign 3 players for the price of that who might do a better overall job. Like, so I don't see any dramas with, especially when like everything worked out for him when he left. Phoenix have gotten a lot better, and it wasn't immediate, but they have gotten a lot better in the time since. And now he returns to the club. Yeah, go.
Sorry to interrupt, because I know you were just getting to like the present moment and the future, but it does seem like a really football thing to hold on to the like what happened. Like,
yeah, I'd say a sports thing, because working on that quotable Stephen Adams piece, one of the things that came about is like looking back on some of the stuff he had to say in his very first interviews, and all the Memphis people wanted to ask him about was the Zach Randolph incident from when he was a rookie. You know, when it was I think Game 6 of the playoffs, it was the first round, and him and Zach Randolph, like grizzly veteran at that point, Stephen Adams, fresh-faced rookie, running back down the court, and they got tangled or whatever, and Randolph just like elbows him in the head and gets ejected, and then gets suspended for Game 7, which OKC wins, and Memphis fans like booed Adams every time they saw it. And when he would be asked about that at the start of the season, they'd be like, "Yeah, I got punched in the face, and I was the bad guy." Like, what's going on there? But like, they were still thinking to ask him that 6-7 years later, whatever it is. The long memories sometimes with fans, but then also as soon as he puts the colors on again, like as soon as he becomes a Grizzly, it's like one of their own now, all is forgotten, you know? And I think that's a similar thing with Kosta. Like, you can feel a little bit of bad blood initially if you've been clinging to that. I don't know why you'd want to be clinging to that. I already just pointed out reasons why it made sense, and it was probably best for all parties. But I also think the first time he walks out again for the Wellington Phoenix, wearing like black and yellow, all is forgiven, right?
yeah, for sure. I'm just like, I only thought of it because you were talking about the Wellington Phoenix during the season, and all you were talking about was what happened last season and how that is relevant to this season. I'm like, just like, tell me what the Wellington Phoenix are doing this week. You know, tell me how they're playing football now and moving forward. So, I don't know if maybe it's just you and your Wellington Phoenix fandom. You're just thinking about the past, like. Me coming from a Warriors
the season before isn't.
Yeah, but I'm
at least you're building off of the platform there. It's not talking 5 years and 3 managers ago, you know.
Yeah, but I'm coming from a Warriors perspective where, as soon as I can release the thoughts of what happened, it's gone, and it's all about the future, where it is a very different thing between those clubs. But that
the Warriors are next year rather than last year. That's a different mentality.
We're talking around all of this, and I interrupted, so it's my bad. But tell us how Kosta Barbarouses fits into the Wellington Phoenix right now. Who gives a fuck what the fans think or anyone else thinks? Just tell us what Kosta Barbarouses gives the Wellington Phoenix this coming season.
Well, hopefully most people love Kosta. I've always loved Kosta. He's a cool dude and a good player. So, and he fits the squad like a glove. You know, like the style of play that they have. Well, first of all, they've got Ufuk Talay. So here's a manager that players want to play for. That stability, like, covered. Kosta said this. Steven Ugarkovic said this about like Ufuk Talay was the number one reason he wanted to come and sign with the Phoenix, like play for that dude. That's just a major thing that the Phoenix have in their favor right now, is a well-respected manager that other guys want to work with. So that helps. There's some stability there, cohesion, that they've had a similar squad for a few years, bit of excitement going on with some of the young guys coming through as well. That makes them interesting. They definitely feel like a club that's moving in an upward trajectory at the moment with the way they've been going. And as long as Ufuk Talay stays, then that's the case. He's got one more year in his contract, so get at least one more season of that. And then tactically as well, there's structure there too, because it's Talay's third or fourth season or whatever it is in charge, so there's continuity with that. But then also where it came from was Sydney FC, and the 4-2-2-2 formation that he likes, he took from Sydney FC. He didn't overlap with Kosta Barbarouses there. He joined Sydney FC after Kosta joined Sydney FC after Uffy had left for the Phoenix job, but there's a familiarity with a system there that Kosta's not going to have to worry too much to fit into. And it's a system that suits him nicely because he can play as a 9 in the front too, or he can play as a 10 and sort of like a Well, not so much in a De Vere Sandoval kind of way, but maybe in a bit more of a Piscopo kind of way, like as a winger type player. Like definitely he's got the ability to play in both, like a couple different positions, which is nice. He's an experienced player in a very young team. He'll be the second oldest guy in the squad, a couple months younger than David Ball. I had to check that out to be sure. And he's got championship experience. So it's one of those things where he knows what it takes to win in the A-League. He has confidence. He's used to playing big games. Like all of these things is a good fit for him. And then it's also why he's a good fit for the club, because the other guys that got like Ben Wayne's going to enjoy working with someone like Kosta, and he fits in because he's a relatively, quick and very smart movements off the ball kind of thing. He can do what a lot of what Joshua Soterio was doing last year, which was a really important factor in their play, was being able to make those vertical runs and behind the defense. Costa can do that, and he's a better finisher than Soterio, so that also helps massively. I think it's a really good, tidy signing, and the kind of one. Plus, he's a local player. It's getting good quality without having to use up an import spot there. So I think it's a great signing. And he's a Wellington boy coming home again, and he probably feels like he has unfinished business after the funny thing is he's played for the Phoenix 2 separate stints. He's played like 15, 20 fewer games than Ben Wayne has for the Phoenix and scored half as many goals. So actually, like, it's funny to think about that as like this emerging player in Ben Wayne. It's a much bigger impact so far on what Costa has when he's been at the club a couple different times coming back for his third stint. But third time's the charm, I'm expecting a little bit more from him this time than we got from him the last couple of times he was around.
The Blackcaps are starting their third test against England tonight, wildcard. And the more I think about this, the less I care about what the Blackcaps are doing. It's not that we've talked about this in the Patreon podcast. I don't care about the Blackcaps. I'm not trying to gain insights about what's happening, I think is the best way to say it. There's like Hamish Bennett, he wrote in the media, like, New Zealand cricket should change this, and everyone should be doing Brendan McCullum styles, and other people are writing about players out of form. Other people are highlighting this is wrong, that's wrong. The more I think about it, I just think everything's wrong. So if everything is wrong, I don't care about Tom Latham's form, because everything's gone wrong. Like, so many little details are stacking up. Like wrong decisions are being made, weird selections are being made, but that's just in a pool, a big pool, as big as the Blackcaps pool of depth. But it's a pool of icky. And it's a kind of ickiness that stems from bad luck. Mistakes get highlighted when you're losing, and it just all adds up. It all compounds on top of each other. And there is some really important cricket on the horizon, T20 World Cup, home summer. And I'm thinking now is not the time to make judgments about specific players, about the coach, about the style of cricket. Like, just let all that go and see what comes out the other end, is what I'm thinking. Because the T20 World Cup is going to be a monster, come back to the home summer. And maybe the best way to describe it is we're dealing in a funnel right now. And the funnel is at the top. So it's like it's a big net. It's a big space. Lots of players are being used in the Blackcaps test squad, in the ODI T20 squads. Lots of players are being used. Lots of shit is happening. Over the next 6 months, it's just going to funnel down into the best possible Blackcaps cricket. And if you're a cricketing nerd, now's a great time to tap in, because you're going to, over the course of these tours, you're going to learn which players are building a case over multiple games, multiple series. Who are the players standing up? Otherwise, you can just come back at the T20 World Cup and see the best possible team on the park. And all of that comes back down to this third test, where the Blackcaps just have to kind of pull something together. Just pull something together. Offer some competitive, grindy, gritty cricket, and hopefully expose England, who think they're going to change the cricketing world based on 2 test matches. So that's kind of my rant about cricket in New Zealand, Blackcaps cricket. How are you feeling wildcard?
Yeah, the overreactions have been pretty high from the from this first couple of games of this series. Like it's like the good old days. Dare I say it, the pre-McCullum days. In fact, even I don't know. I think even the McCullum days probably fit into this a little bit. Where it was like the Blackcaps would win at home, everyone would love them. They'd go overseas and lose. Everyone would freak out about how terrible they are. Like just the big swings back and forth. Little bit of that at play at the moment. Definitely that at play from England. It's like I was saying to you before, like the saying, like there's where you can't judge a pitch until both teams are batted on it. It feels the same thing about the English cricket team right now under McCullum and Stokes, where it's like, let's see you do this on an away tour. Like it wasn't your home form that got the last regime in so much trouble. It was when you went to Australia and got absolutely pummeled, and then didn't do too well either in the West Indies. Like let's see what you do away from home. I think they're going to Pakistan later in the year, and I think we are as well. So that might be an interesting comparison to see where these two teams are at in 6 months. Because the other thing about the Blackcaps is like they've lost both games, and they've been pummeled in the fourth innings of both games. But the first 3 innings of those games, they were still in a position to win it going into the last day and the last innings of both these test matches. And the Blackcaps have not had a full strength team in either of them. Blackcaps with a full strength team, maybe Neil Wagner's there, Kane Williamson in both games, maybe someone like Henry Nicholls in the first game, although Mitchell came in for him and was one of the best players. So maybe not, I don't know. But definitely not having an injured bowler in the fourth innings of both of those games from de Grandhomme, and then also Ajaz Patel, who was probably emotionally injured from not being given the ball to have an opportunity himself, or Kyle Jamieson being injured in the second test. Like that would also help massively if you have a full stable of bowlers to try bowl a team out on the final day. That would also have helped. It's frustrating because we had high expectations going into the series, but also like there are reasons why the Blackcaps haven't performed, and there's not like they've been blown off the park over 5 days. Like I keep saying this, but the tests have been closer than they seem, and I don't know, maybe Neil Wagner surely plays the third test and tips the scales. I don't know, but the overreactions have definitely been there from Blackcaps fans who maybe got too used to expecting big things from them even when they're away from home. And definitely the overreaction from English fans and English media who are just ready to anoint Brendan McCullum as the great start, fantastic start. Let's reassess in 6 months after a couple more tours and see where we're at then,
Maybe the T20 World Cup, we'll see.
Maybe.
Well, he's not in charge, so
then, although he's not, yeah.
I've been thinking about the domestic contracts wildcard, and the reason they're so much more interesting than the Blackcaps contracts is they basically tell us who's going to be playing where. And it's just the domestic contracts are basically the transfer market. And so this is where we find out who's gone where, who's doing what, who snuck over there, who lured this player here. And like, who the fuck knows how domestic contracts work? Like there's like no salary cap or, any of that shit. So it is a bit murky, but we do have some interesting moves that I'd like to discuss with you quickly. So Auckland, Central districts are pretty similar, pretty much the same. Canterbury are pretty similar as well. All provinces and all teams, they might promote a youngster from within their region. That's cool. But we're talking about dudes who are making the move. Glenn Phillips made the move to Otago. East Sodhi's also made the move for Canterbury. We've talked about those previously. The move of Nick Kelly from Otago to Wellington's kind of interesting, because when I was thinking about Otago cricket on the back of Glenn Phillips and all that stuff, I was thinking about the Otago top order featuring Nick Kelly, Glenn Phillips, Dale Phillips. The young Cummings, pretty good. Hamish Rutherford as well. So like that was pretty cool. Now Nick Kelly's going to Wellington, and holy cow. Wellington's batting lineup, Finn Allen, Nick Kelly, Troy Johnson's a fantastic young batter. I also like Robinson. He is a fantastic talent as well. So their batting lineup is bolstered. Wellington have also signed Adam Milne. Again, shit the bed. Wellington are going to have Adam Milne and Ben Sears in their same bowling attack. Like, imagine trying to smack them around in the Super Smash. You better be good at the old ramp. Better good, slicing it off your stumps. 145 k's an hour. Good luck. That's a really interesting move. Central have kind of absorbed the loss of Adam Milne by signing Northern District seamer Brett Randall, who was not playing all formats for Northern Districts last summer, even though he was, I think he might have been one of the best Plunkett Shield wicket takers. He might have been first in Plunkett Shield wicket takers.
Yeah, I think he was first equal.
So he now moves to Central Districts, which is, I suspect, will be a decent move for him in his career, because he'll probably play all three formats. And as we know, Northern Districts are not short of available cricketers. They're quite a bit of stock coming through there. As I said, everything else is basically young players being promoted from within. I will dive into these contract lists at some stage over the next month or so. Might just wait for the second announcement. But yeah, so we got Nick Kelly and Adam Milne joining Wellington, and Northern Brett Randall joining Central Districts wildcard. What are your thoughts?
Well, the age-old tradition of Wellington scooping up Otago prospects, in particular all-rounders who bat in the sort of middle order, that continues. Nick Kelly, less of an all-rounder, but I think he can bowl a little bit of offies or something, but not really a bowler. But
the trend of Wellington signing anyone, like they signed Finn Allen from Auckland.
True.
They managed to sign Luke Georgeson from Ireland after he had signed with Ireland, so that was a bit of a coup. Let's look at their contracted player list. Like, Wellington do have a fantastic player development setup. They do kind of one of the best, I'd say, just as far as like upgrading talent. Finn Allen's from Auckland. Nick Kelly is from the Auckland region by way of Northern Districts and Otago. Adam Milne, Central Districts.
And Australia.
Yep. And Nathan Smith from Otago, Logan Van Beek from Canterbury. So that's just the trend of Wellington making really astute, slick signings.
Yeah, they're pretty good at that. They've got a nice balance between they pick up the prospects from elsewhere. I mean, Jimmy Neesham sort of rehabbed his career in Wellington as well a couple of years ago.
You're going back in the past again, Wildcard.
That's only a couple of years. That's just that was the Otago to Wellington pipeline. I was thinking of Jimmy Neesham a couple of years ago. Then last year you've got Nathan Smith, and now Nick Kelly. Sort of. But as you point out, they're scooping them from everywhere. Stephen Fleming.
Yeah, some major signings. So
sure, from Canterbury to Wellington once upon a time. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand with Adam Milne, he lives in Wellington, and it was just an easy thing for him to switch over. Which is where I think that Brett Randall one is quite interesting, because it's not just Adam Milne. I read their press release. They also said, I think it was who was it? I think it's Ben Wheeler has like a serious knee injury or something like that, or some injury that's going to keep him out potentially for the rest of the season. So they're effectively, he's not left or anything, but he's injured. So they've effectively down two frontline seamers. They tend to have pretty decent stocks there. Seth Rance will still be going around. Old Ray Toole picks up wickets. But Brett Randall's a really nice addition to that, it feels. And the kind of one which, like, these are kind of the kind of moves that are exciting to see in domestic cricket, because Northern Districts aren't going to miss him as much as Central Districts are going to welcome him, kind of thing, because ND has like just stocks through the roof, and they're very good at producing like good right arm seam bowlers. So that's handy. Like they can afford that loss. But whereas CD like desperately needs someone like that to fill in for the guys that they've left, it just spreads the talent around nicely, and that's cool to see. Maybe not as much as like Glenn Phillips to Otago spreads the talent around, which is also an extremely good one to see. But like you never get heaps of movement in the domestic cricket. I think there's always a couple of really funky, interesting ones each season, which is what you need. You've got mostly continuity, but then you also get these cool ones where it's like, yeah, that helps not just that team, but like the whole landscape.
I'd say we've got heaps right now. Like this is heaps of movement. Glenn Phillips from Auckland going to Otago, Ish Sodi from Northern to Canterbury,
Yeah.
Nick Kelly from Otago. Like these are players who are established with their now previous team. Like Brett Randall was pretty much embedded as a Northern Districts cricketer. I think he went to school in Auckland, but he might be from up north or something like that. And yeah, I just assumed he would be with Northern Districts for a while. I assume Nick Kelly will stay with Otago for a while. Compared to last year, where there was basically no movement, it was pretty much just Nathan Smith moving from Otago to Wellington. This year feels like heaps of movement, and it's heaps of movement in the sense that it's quality and quantity. Like there's a decent number of players, but these are all the best players. Like Ish Sodi's one of the best spinners in Aotearoa. Glenn Phillips is straight up one of the best cricketers from Aotearoa. Adam Milne's the fastest bowler in Aotearoa. Nick Kelly has low-key been one of the best domestic batters in Aotearoa. Brett Randall, first equal for Plunkett Shield wickets last summer. Like these are dudes who are all enjoying their cricket. Like they're taking runs and scoring wickets, you know, scoring runs, taking wickets. And
Both.
yeah, so it's high quality, good quantity, and it's the type of contract roundup that gets me a bit excited to talk about it and write about it.
Yeah, you know, this is probably more of a football cliche than a cricket one, but I think it applies as well. You know, when they're like, someone comes back from injury or whatever, and they'll be like, he's as good as a new signing. It's basically a new signing. That I think there's potential for that kind of cliche as well. Looking at the Otago squad and seeing old mate Dean Foxcroft is back as well. Having been basically stranded overseas because he wasn't a permanent resident, he couldn't get back into the country during COVID times. He's back now as well. A really excellent, you know, top order batsman who fills a very pertinent need for Otago. So I think they'll be rather, you know, as well. One other thing that was quite funky is looking at the list and seeing Otago listed Glenn Phillips on their contract list. He's not actually contracted to Otago, though, is he? Because he's contracted to the Blackcaps. He's just signed to play with Otago. And I was looking through the Canterbury list, and they didn't have Ish Sodi there. I'm like, well, why don't they have Ish Sodi? And then, oh wait, well, same thing. He's not contracted to Canterbury. He's contracted to the Blackcaps. I just thought it was funny how Canterbury didn't list Ish Sodi because he's not a technical contract player, but Otago were just that chuffed. They had to point out that we signed Glenn Phillips. So they squeezed him onto the contract list, even though he shouldn't technically be there, sort of thing. But you know, you shout it from the rooftops. Why not? It's a great signing.
Might have just been a mishap, you know. Like don't read it too much.
No chance. New Zealand cricket circles, no mishaps.
It is interesting just seeing how some of the teams like present all their shit, and you can see it like whatever league you follow, NRL, Premier League, each team has their own little style of doing things, and so it is interesting just to see how like serious some of the teams take their announcements, and yeah, you're definitely reading too much into that Glenn Phillips thing, but each team has their own little priority or their own little focus they're trying to do. Like the Central Districts one was like a full-on fucking breakdown of Adam Milne's career. It's like, bro, he's just moved. Like he doesn't live in Central Districts anymore. He's already moved on. You know, just don't worry. He's got a bit of that historical stuff that you're talking about with the Phoenix. You know, Central Districts living in the past there. I promise I will not talk about, you know, 2019 for the Aotearoa Kiwis or, you know, what has happened I don't even have to worry about last year for International Rugby League.
There was none.
There's been none. So we're all good there. And I won't refer back to 2019 because some games happened in 2019, but here we are, middle of 2022, and it's a long way away. And we've got some Aotearoa Kiwis Rugby League. It was good to see a bit of buzz around they had a little community set up in Otahu. And I did like the idea that like Oda Blue turns red when Tonga's around. And like, there's only one thing that can make Oda Blue red, and that's Tonga. So shout out to Tonga, shout out to the community around Aotearoa. As I said in the variety show, it's just fantastic to see the buzz, see people happy, see the players. Like, when you think about this Kiwis team, it's quite a young Kiwis team, and they're all very proud to get back to Aotearoa represent. Obviously, Auckland's the Polynesian capital of the world, so there's same thing with Tonga. I do note here, Christian Tuipulotu is starting on the wing for Tonga. That's a fantastic little promotion for him. And the youngster Isaiah Katoa is not playing in the halves. There was some talk that he might play. He's the younger brother of Sione Katoa, who is from Wellington, who has previously played for Tonga. And I think he played some rugby in Wellington before moving to Australia. Not sure exactly when he moved to Australia, but his brother was playing with Tonga, with Penrith Panthers for a while, so it was probably during that time. But now he's signed to Redcliffe Dolphins, and at the time there was a bit of the Panthers were moaning about teams stealing their development players. And from my perspective, I'm like, this dude moved from New Zealand to Penrith. He's not like your special Panthers scouting development player. No, he's a dude who was playing rugby union in Aotearoa and moved to Australia and was in your region. Like, just chill out on that. But there was some talk that he might start in the halves because he is signed to Redcliffe Dolphins already. But he's not. He's on the bench, so that's cool for him. But I do love that Christian Tuipulotu slot on the wing. And then the Aotearoa Kiwis squad is pretty hectic. Mulatalo's on the wing. Niokore at centre is quite interesting. I think he'll flex all over. I think he might line up against Moses Sully, big body. Niokore is a big body as well. The Kiwis team's pretty impressive. I'm kind of interested in a lot of the tactical stuff. So what does Michael Maguire and the Kiwis team do to attack Tonga's weakness, which is going to be their playmaking and their kicking and their control of a game? And I think that's going to be interesting because you've basically got one kicker there, Talatau Amone. Fascinating time with the name pronunciation here, Wildcard. Talatau Amone is going to be playing in Aotearoa, and we know the Aotearoa commentators love to get a name right. Shout out to them. And I found some crystallization here, Wildcard. We say Sam Lasone. We don't say Sam Lasone.
Sam Lyson.
Yeah, like, it's literally exact same. You do not say Sam Lasone. You say Sam Lasone. So why are you saying Talatau Amon?
Yeah, Amon.
If there is any non-Australian commentator commentating this game, I'm fairly confident they will say Amone. And I hope it happens because then I can feel a bit more comfortable about my own pronunciation beliefs. It would be like Marate Niakor. No, there's an E on the end. It's Niakore, like it's Joseph. Early in his career, they would say Joseph Tapine.
Tapine.
Right? So it's the same thing. There's an E on the end, and you're saying Talatala Moan, and you used to say Joseph Tapine or Tapin. No, it's Joseph Tapine. Like, there's a bit of nuance there, but it gets a bit tricky. But that's the Kiwis versus Tonga. Going to be a fascinating game. Obviously, the forward packs are equal. They're both monstrous. Mentioned the former Jason Taumalolo in the variety show. Asafa Salamona coming off the bench. Fotuaika coming off the bench. It's going to be an amazing game. But I do think there is an area of weakness that the Kiwis can attack in kick pressure and, kicking long, kicking to corners, amping up on defense. Because I don't know what Tonga are going to do if they have a set of 6 where they're coming off their own try line, they get to the 20-meter line, who's going to kick downfield? are they going to be able to kick 50 meters downfield? Because Joseph Manu, Ronaldo Mulatalo, and Jordan Rapinoe are going to be waiting for the footy, on the 40-meter line, on the 50-meter line, ready to pounce. So that is probably the most decisive factor in this game. Obviously, for Tonga, they might conjure up something different to counteract that and to make up for that little weakness. So that's kind of a tactical battle. Just where does your mind go with this game, Wildcard?
Similar areas. It does feel like I'm quite excited to see a halves combination of Dylan Brown and Jerome Hughes. I think that's extremely tasty, particularly after 2.5 years without any Kiwis International Rugby League. It's a bit of a bang to return upon. That's exciting, and I think it has been the case in the past with Tonga that's been sort of the weak aspect, is maybe that playmaking sort of gloss on top of everything else. It does feel like that's the target area, yeah.
Just on that, they used to have Ata Hingano and Tui Lolohea. They are both pure halves. They both grew up playing in the halves, played a lot of footy in the halves as young players, and that was a key aspect of their World Cup success. They had halves playing in the halves. And now that's less so the case. I don't think Katoni Staggs is going to kick the footy. Kula runs very fast. Is he going to kick the footy? Saliva Havili is kind of used as a middle forward for the Rabbitohs this year. So I would say that this specific version of Tonga, not quite as good as the spine that they've had previously. Also, Will Hopewade, very classy player, good hands, good fullback distribution. Don't know if Kula's going to do that. So it does feel like this, in regards to the spine, that this spine is a bit weaker than previous Tongan spines.
And the dudes that you mentioned, who was it, Lolohea and Hingano, that just shows you they don't need prime Andrew Johns to be a successful team in those roles. Those dudes didn't quite stick it at NRL level. They were good, solid players. In better situations, maybe they would have, but they weren't, gonna go on to Hall of Fame careers or anything like that. They didn't need superstars in those roles. They just needed guys who could do those kind of things. So the margin for error isn't crazy there. They've got a bit of room to work with. And maybe they can finesse that to make that work. And then the forward pack just puts enough pressure on that they can control the game that way. That's a possibility. That's probably the blueprint. But I also like the look of that Kiwis team, and I back them to kind of to handle the arm wrestle factor, and then to have that little bit of touch on top of that. I would think.
Also, no Warriors in the team, and
really?
I am chuffed. So happy.
I didn't even realize that.
Just to
is that including the bench?
Including the bench. The bench is Foreign, Leota, Asafa Solomona, and Britton Nakora. So there is Maratini Akore is going to the Warriors next season. Isaiah Papali'i and Nakora were both in the Warriors system before. Peta Hiku left the Warriors, back in the Kiwis. So, and of course, according to all Australian media, the Warriors have tried to sign Joseph Manu, Dylan Brown, Jerome Hughes, Brandon Smith, and every other fucking New Zealand player under the sun at some stage as well. But yes, definitely want to highlight that there are no Warriors in this Kiwis team. And the reason I'm so happy is because it actually represents Aotearoa Rugby League. The fact that people assume that there should be Warriors in a Kiwis team is ridiculous. Because here we have 17 players from Aotearoa, or players who want to represent Aotearoa, who you've said yourself that this is a pretty strong Kiwis team, and they're all not from the Warriors. So what does that tell you about Aotearoa Rugby League? That it's fucking amazing. That there is just so much talent from Aotearoa, and that talent, it's no like guarantee, or it's not a mandatory thing that any rugby league player from Aotearoa has to be linked to the Warriors or should be in the Warriors system. Like, move beyond that way of thinking. These players are all representing Aotearoa and playing at the highest level in the NRL, and they're all dominant players. Like, a lot of these players are the best top 3, top 5 in their positions in the NRL, and there's no connection to the Warriors, and that really represents Aotearoa Rugby League, because everything is moved beyond the Warriors, and it's fine, it's cool, it's great. So celebrate it. And I think if you look at the team list and you're like, holy shit. I think hopefully when we watch the game, then we're also thinking, holy shit, this team is fire.
Yeah, it's a nice separation, I guess, between the Kiwi Rugby League focus and then the reality. Like because if the Warriors had been on an 8-game winning streak or whatever, I don't know if it's up to 8-game losing streak, whatever they're on now. I've lost count, but they've not been picked because they're playing badly. And then if the team's playing badly, players within it are probably playing badly. And even then, so I've seen some good stuff about Shaun Johnson. You wrote about Shaun Johnson as well. Maybe not getting picked on a little bit, a bit of a scapegoat, maybe not as bad as people are making out just because he's playing average in a bad team. But that's the point. Average isn't good enough to get you into a Kiwi squad anymore. Just being around and doing it's a similar thing to what I was writing about with the All Whites. And I don't know that they're quite there in all positions, but there's definitely some. Bill Tuiloma wouldn't have been starting that game a year ago over Michael Boxall, but he's just played better than him. And Boxall hasn't played badly or anything. Well, Boxall's been good, solid for Minnesota, but Bill Tuiloma's just been outstanding for Portland at the same MLS level. It takes that form into the All Whites camp, and suddenly he's pushed in ahead and he's getting to start the Costa Rica game. That's the kind of competition that you want, to where just turning up is not enough. You've got to you want enough depth in every position, which the Kiwis are basically at this point in time now. Enough depth in every position to where good enough isn't good enough. You got to be better. You got to be outperforming everybody else. You can't just turn up, kind of thing. And that's probably what we're seeing. The Warriors run an 8-game winning streak. Shaun Johnson's probably playing really well. He's probably in that team. It's no shade. It's no dramas. That's just how it is. If you don't play well enough, if enough people in your position are playing better than you, and he's obviously far the only bird. I'm just kind of playing into the scapegoating thing again, just by using him as the example. But because there's guys across the park you could say the same thing about. I mean, Tohu Harris would have been there if he was fitter. That's I expect he's just one of those not ready. Out. Yeah, he did
last year or something. He was like, "No, I don't want to play for Kiwis." That's fair enough. I don't know. There is a very powerful look to this Kiwis team, and as good as Tohu Harris is he better? Same. It's actually quite similar to Shaun Johnson, because regardless of what they do, like you said, if the Warriors were winning 6 in a row, 7 in a row, heck, if the Warriors were just in the mix,
yeah,
Shaun Johnson would be there. Well, you kind of alluded to that. Dylan Brown. What do we? I don't have the stats for this season in front of me, but what have we said about Dylan Brown before? He averages 100 running meters, and he's probably the best tackling number 6 in the NRL. Okay, so that is the baseline. So even if Shaun Johnson is playing good footy, is he better than Dylan Brown? Because Dylan Brown's really fucking good. He is 21 years old, and he has been in the finals for 2 or 3 consecutive seasons by now, right? He's really good. Jerome Hughes might be a top 2, top 3 halfback in the competition. and he's playing for the best team of our lifetimes, right? The best club. So that is the baseline to get into a starting Kiwis halves combination. I don't know. Shaun Johnson would have to be doing some ridiculous shit in that winning streak for the Warriors to earn selection ahead of those dudes. And then you go to Tohu Harris. Okay, so... Well, Joseph Tapine is in career best form. Right? Probably...
yeah.
I'm from Aotearoa, so I'm putting him up as the best middle forward in the NRL right now. Joseph Tapine. And he's starting number 13. That's Tohu Harris. James Fisher-Harris. Well, Joseph Tapine overtook James Fisher-Harris as the best middle forward in the NRL. Jesse Bromwich is, to me, he's the GOAT. He's the dude. He's the leader. Shout out to Jared Waidea-Hargreaves as well, because he's out at the moment, I think, and he would be in this Kiwi squad as well. And yeah, we can get caught up with all the young dudes, but those dudes, Bromwich, Waidea-Hargreaves, they literally are Aotearoa mana. And you need that leadership, you need that experience and that guidance in a younger squad. So Tohu Harris isn't better than Waidea-Hargreaves right now. Jesse Bromwich is the OG, and you can't select Tohu Harris over Jesse Bromwich. But what if you want to put Tohu Harris on an edge? Well, Isaiah Papali'i is the best edge forward in the whole NRL. Right? Kenny Bromwich is the most underrated NRL player. Literally, I firmly believe that. He tackles well. He does his job in the best team, or one of the best teams right now, so that's a good sign. But you also need to, like, if you watch the Melbourne Storm attack, the ball goes through Kenny Bromwich's hands to get to the winger. Sotili Tupouniua, fantastic edge forward with the Roosters, he's not necessarily a distributing edge forward. He runs really good lines. Kaloa Matangi, not going to pass the ball too often. Kenny Bromwich is a focal point of the Melbourne Storm's left edge attack. They use him as a decoy. They use him as a runner. They use him as a passer. And right now, he's better than Tohu Harris as an edge forward. Like, yeah, you might put Tohu Harris on the bench ahead of Britton Nakora. But I'd say maybe I'd put Scott Sorensen on the bench ahead of Britton Nakora. So you can take all those Shaun Johnson's ideas, which I made a pretty compelling case for Shaun Johnson not being in the top 3 Aotearoa Kiwis halves in this imaginary good form Warriors situation. Same thing with Tohu Harris. Same thing with Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. Like, he's in the squad. I think he's the only Warriors player in the squad. He's not top 2 wingers. He's not top 3 wingers. Like, no, Aotearoa is so good that there's just there's so much talent that those players are not good enough. And just because they play for the Warriors doesn't mean they are automatic selections. Shit. Just because they're in the Warriors does not mean they are in the mix. Because right now, you've got to be one of the best players in your position in the NRL to be selected. That is the benchmark. And in a winning streak Warriors team, I don't even know if they are in the best of their positions, you know? So to me, that just tells the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want as well. I mean, like, because Tohu Harris obviously has a bit of X factor that he can bring to the thing, but like, so does Kenny Bromwich, as he said. Like, he is also a ball playing back rower in that role. So it's like, even the things that like set you apart, it's like, it's hard to have a skill set that nobody else in contention is going to have. Like, there's not very many players in that squad that you could say that about, that there isn't, that is so unique that nobody else can do similar things. Maybe in a Sofa Solomona or a Joey Manu might fall into that. I mean, Dylan Brown's defensive work as a half probably is a factor like that, but there's not a lot. And there's always competition for places. And that is where any international team wants to be. It's like, you don't want to be, I mean, Oh, there's benefits to having a team that's like based on the spine of a successful Warriors team or something like that, just for continuity. But you've got to get a successful Warriors team first for that to be the case. Or like, let's say the Melbourne Storm had like a Kiwi fullback, Kiwi half, Kiwi. Well, they actually got a few of these, don't they? And maybe that is actually the case with this team. There's a lot of those guys that are in that starting line. I come to think of it, but you also do want to be able to pick from a variety of sources, from like just as many, because there's many different what's the metaphor for this, like just as, I don't know, as many variety as the spice of life or something. That's not quite right, but you want as many different avenues of players being able to come through as possible. So you want guys at most clubs, you want guys in every position, all these things. They've got that at the moment, and then it's just a matter of picking the right team to make it work on top of that. And I mean, we'll find out what that looks like on Saturday, isn't it? It's Saturday. Is it an afternoon game? I might have to watch it on replay after football.
Yeah, it's 5:30, 5:20, I think.
Yeah, touch and go off and back for that.
I have done a Kiwi Ferns preview. I've also done a Kiwi NRL breakdown of Samoa, Tonga, and Cook Islands, so check those out. We'll probably just wrap up our Kiwis versus Tonga yarn here to finish the podcast. I do have this thought wildcard because, I don't know, rugby league test footy is like, who's available? Put them in.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's how it was, especially for Aotearoa and the Polynesian nations. But like, I think the overlooked thing is like, you want the best international teams, they need to know what test footy is about.
Yeah.
Like, if you put a new player into test cricket, it's a whole different thing. First of all, Plunkett Shield cricket's only 4 days. Test cricket's 5 days. So logistically, it's a whole different challenge, and you need to step up. If you're going from professional football in some country to representing all whites in a international fixture, it's a whole different level. You're playing against international players. And if you're like, NBA players go to international basketball, it's a whole different situation. In rugby league, we don't have that perspective, I don't think. But as international rugby league grows, again, rugby union, if you're stepping up to play against the All Blacks, you're in for a rude fucking awakening, because they're playing rugby union at a whole different level to whatever your little club team's playing. And like, if you're stepping into the All Blacks, well, then you're around all these legends and you have to fit in. You have to learn how they prepare, what makes them test rugby players and all that. Rugby league wasn't at that point way back in 2019. Yeah. But I think we're getting there. And I think for this test, I think there's some players, like there's a lot of new players, fair play. Like we haven't had international rugby league for a while, so we do have some new players, but like Talatau Amone is going to learn what it's like to be a starting halfback at the international rugby league level. And I think both teams will be quite eager to show their opponent what international rugby league is about, because the collisions in the middle, woo-wee, it's going to be a bit, bit full on. No handbrakes.
No.
But
I think what you're saying is also applicable in the opposite sense to the All Whites lost to Costa Rica as well, where it's like, it wasn't their fault. Like, they just hadn't had time to get accustomed to the international football thing. But I do think that was a major factor, is like one team real experienced, one team real inexperienced, and the experienced team won despite not being the best performing team on the day, because they just controlled the little factors and they knew what they were stepping into, and the All Whites didn't have that necessarily, and they didn't have the opportunity to have that. It was too soon for a lot of these young players, and they will learn and grow from that. Like, that's the standard that's now been set for them as international footballers. They will be better for that, but I think that was probably one of the defining factors in that World Cup playoff loss as well.
And like, everything I'm saying about Amone goes for Dylan Brown, right? Like,
yep,
it's a whole different. He's going to be playing in Aotearoa, for Aotearoa as a starting half. It's a different beast, and like, all the state of origin conversation is about this. oh, is this player going to be able to adapt to the arena and deal with the pressure and everything? Well, it's exactly the same for international rugby league, and we have to view it that way, and we have to see which players step up, which players aren't quite at that level of international consistency and just caliber. So that's what international rugby league brings back into the equation, and you're going to learn about some of these young players. Like, do they rise to the occasion? I think about someone like Will Penasini. Fantastic pedigree background in Sydney. To me, he feels like someone who's going to rise to the occasion, because that's every level of footy he's gone through. He's kind of done that in Australia. Christian Tuipulotu, again, I'm excited to see him starting on the wing for Tonga, because he is one of the most decorated, high pedigree juniors out of Aotearoa. And as a Tongan Kiwi, now he's starting on the wing for Tonga, and he's going to, am curious to see how he elevates his game to the international arena. Whereas like some of the forwards, they know exactly what's happening. Tokiaho, Taumalolo, Whanua Blake, Joseph Tapine, Fisher Harris, like these dudes know exactly what's happening in the international arena, and that's where the oomph is in this test, and it's going to be exciting. And that is the Niche Cast. Bumper edition. Big Aotearoa Sporting Yarns. We'll be back sometime in the future with some more Aotearoa sporting content, as well as email banger. Check that out tomorrow. Might just keep an eye out for the Kiwi NRL spotlights. Like, will be plenty of those coming over the next few days. Stephen Adams Quotable edition, all niche case content coming up. Kia kaha, stay beautiful. Choo choo.